All right, let's get the old heads and the youngins together. Let's see exactly what this data set is pointing. John Welfare has been pulling some data from Xbox's, I think it's a GDC presentation, and I think we need to take a look at it because this may be pointing to something that, at the end of the day is worth looking at. It really does explain a few things. John Welfare writes and says data from Xbox on multi-device ownership across multiple age demos. Boomers, 28%. X 37, millennials 49%, and Gen Z 52%, and Alpha 55%. Gen Alpha are the number one leisure time is gaming. Oh, interesting. And then basically this is from their developer roundtable, and apparently John Welfare says I'm Gen Z, and part of that 52% game on console, PC, and phone. Now, this person is laughing and saying, "Who says Gen Alpha?" And it's just a conversation that's actually going down in that regard. Someone says anything about console sales. This person said not I could find, and all of the above. So apparently, what this is pointing to is the multi-device games and players, basically that are tapped into that particular framework where they have multiple devices and they can play their games on different hardware. The millennials are the smaller group, but I just think probably the reason you see this is because people are aging out. I'm in this demographics. If you look at the Video Game Fight School channel, there are a huge number of folk within this demographics as well that watch the channel, listen to video game stuff. And then Gen Z and Gen Alpha are into that multi-device gameplay. Now, where the Gen Z, are playing their games. In some cases, they're playing their games on their PCs, they're playing on their consoles, some are playing on their phones. Not too many, in my opinion, anyways, from what I've seen. Now, the alphas, nonetheless, the Gen Alpha, oh, you bet that they're playing on mobile phones. That's number one. And then anything else that they can get their hands on that their friends are playing on. They'll play on their Nintendo Switches if they have Nintendo Switches, but they're mostly wanting to play community-based games as well when they actually get some sit-down time. Now, this is a very interesting generation. The read that you're getting on them is based on what Xbox can collect, but if Xbox understood a little bit more as to how they actually go ahead and vibe, they do things slightly differently. Because right now, that's one thing about Xbox is it's branded itself in the past as a walled garden, right? And so it almost cannot break away too fast from that walled garden to capture the market that it's actually going for. So it's taking its time. It's doing some things little by little. It's, making, minimal strides here and there, and which is fine. But to be very honest, that demographics is playing games on, rando websites like scienceassignments.space. That's the kind of places they're playing their games. Have you ever seen anything like that before? Science assignment spaces. It's like you'll see like a little it'll be like a weird URL, right? So, and if you go to it, what you see is like some weird I don't even know how you put it. It's some weird like web games, right? When you actually go ahead and take a look at that. That's how these kids are playing their games and going around, IT blocks on school internet accounts. As somebody who's an educator, we usually have to basically stay in touch with IT and say, hey, man, they found a way to go ahead and crack the IP blocking systems that you guys have put in place. You guys need to tighten it up a little bit. And when you look at the URLs basically have things like math assignments.spaces. So the IP block can't really always be like, oh, what's that? Science, math. Like if you go block those hard terminologies, you're going to ruin like a lot of other, educational experiences that are going on. So this is a very interesting generation whereby they can just game wherever it is that they want to game. Now, another challenge too is many of them, in this whole regard, that puts them in a place where they just want to game wherever they are is because their parents are, for the most part, controlling their gaming. I mean, even if their parents aren't indirectly their schedules and, just their phase of life. They're mostly, when did they go to bed? Many of them are, sent to bed at a certain time. They got to turn off their TVs or whatever. Some of them, are not allowed to basically be, doing some things after a certain time in the evening. But their parents send them to bed and then go to bed. Well, You know what happens, right? They pull out, they get out their phones, and then they stay up all night, and then they're playing these games. Except for parents who are a little bit strict, or who at least a little bit more cautious, and say, "Hey, man, by the way, make sure you go put that phone over here while you go to bed," and so they can actually get to sleep. Again, these are very interesting generation. Their behaviors are still about to be fully, I don't know, seen as to when they break out and then eventually get to the age, where they can start making their decisions. I mean, if you look at it today, we're in 2015. The oldest of this generation, are barely getting their work permits right now to start getting jobs. So many of them are not in a place where they're already making money and calling the shots for themselves. So I think Xbox is basically in a situation where it's getting its mobile arm and mobile front just ready for this generation, where it's like, okay, the moment you decide you want to start getting into much more intricate gaming, say maybe even from your consoles and from your PCs, there is a cell phone side to it that can also be a complementary piece of the puzzle. So if you take a very good look at it, this is a data set that really right now doesn't even necessarily make sense. When you look at it in isolation, you really got to be able to think about how that demographics actually resonates with their gaming, and where they're all, playing their games back and forth, and the habits that they're creating. And I think it's these habits that they're creating that these companies are probably trying to take into account. Now, here's the challenge for the walled gardens. The walled gardens are going to have a very challenging time in being able to create the on the go experience that a lot of these kids are developing right now. This is Gen Alpha. That's what they're getting used to. Think about it. The cell phones that are available to them are these behemoths of power and, efficiency and performance. Yes, compared to cell phones that, say, you as a millennial grew up with. Let me try and see if we can actually, you know what? Let's do this. The oldest millennial, right? The oldest millennial was born in 1981, right? So when the oldest millennial was 15 years old, it was 1995, I think. Oh my gosh. I'm not in the 81 category. I'm an 80s kid, but late 80s. But if you were looking at, say, when cell phones came out, let's just go with even, say, okay, let's do a late millennial, like 1990. You were born in 1990, right? And your first cell phone was in 2000. Oh man, that's crazy. So in 1999, you were 9 years old. In 2000, you were 10 years old. So the first cell phone that you could find maybe around 2004, 2005, when you were 15. Let's look at 2005, cell phones. Let's see what was available to you at the time. So in 2005, mobile phones introduced in 2005. Yeah, let's see what you had back then. You had the Nokia 7370. Ooh, look at you. You had the Nokia E60. Ooh, beautiful tech. Nokia was taking over the world at the time. Motorola was also doing some really solid work. You had the Motorola C139. You had the little tiny phones. The 6030, I don't even see a picture of this. Oh, look at this. 6620. I owned a Nokia 6600 that my mom had used, and she gave it to me. It was one of my pride and joy. I used the phone. It looked almost exactly like this, and you could play these little games that were made under Symbian OS. That's what they used back then, and they were mostly Java games, tiny little games that you could play. So yes, in our time, we were gaming on these devices, but the games were lame compared to what the PS2, PS3, had available. Well, PS3, not. The PS1 and PS2 had available to them, and the Nintendo, consoles. So it was cool at the time, right? But now, if you think about these kids in this particular generation, at the age of 15, the cell phones that's available to them is straight up, at the age of 15, the iPhone 16, which is a massive, massive technological leap compared to what it is that we just got done seeing, in comparison, right? So when you think about, these things can play Assassin's Creed. You know what I mean? Think about, yeah, Assassin's Creed, what's the name? Mirage, iOS. Yeah, you can go in the iOS store and you can play an entirely designed Ubisoft game. Crap. Ubisoft is bringing Prince of Persia. into the whole, paradigm. Look at this. Okay, this is Mac. Yeah, the iPad and the iPhone can play Assassin's Creed Mirage, can play Prince of Persia, Lost Crown, compared to what I could play back in the day on the Symbian OS. I don't know if any of you are actually geeking out right now. I mean, I'm just saying. So when you think about these demographics, you really have to understand that gaming has to, actually follow them. And, publishers and platform holders and developers have got to do things differently. Believe it or not, many of them recognize, things like Steam and all that. They already know all that stuff. They're very well knowledgeable. They're not easily, they're not easily fooled or taken aback by anything way too long. They go figure it out. They go find it out because they're in the information age. So I don't know how PlayStation intends to actually continue with these demographics. Perhaps they're going on with, the possibility that the parents and all of the above are going to continue to introduce them, to that, how do I even put it? They're going to introduce them to that, oh goodness, introduce them to that, that ecosystem. That's what I was trying to say this whole time. I'm like, my brain just went on brain freeze. Anyways, I just thought I'd talk about that because I thought it was a very interesting data set. There's one thing about data. Data is not too exciting. It's not dramatic. But man, it holds some really strong, trends that you can kind of see in the way things are going. But talk to me in the comment section. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching the video. Peace out.